We are living in times where there is an assault on sanity. Political correctness has run amok and logic has been left by the wayside. Do you constantly ask yourself, WTF is going on in this nation? Do you sometimes feel like a stranger in your own country? Well, fear not. You are not alone. This is the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show, coming to you from deep inside flyover country with your hosts, V. Wright and Jose Estevez.
Good evening, everybody. It's WTF, and I am V. Wright.
And I am Jose Estevez. Welcome to the show, folks, where 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, under normal circumstances, we are with you from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, and we come to you unrehearsed, unscripted, unfiltered, and PG-13, but never PC. This is the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot radio show.
Indeed it is. And, of course, you can always share our information with your friends, family, loved ones, associates, social media networks, whatever, wherever, by sending people to our website, thewtfradioshow.com. You can send them to our host network, Patriot Network News at pnntalkradio.com. You can go to patriotsride.org. You can go to Spreaker.com. You can catch us on iTunes. You can download us from iHeartRadio or YouTube following our show, or Spreaker.com, or listen to an archived show there if you happen to miss one. All of those links can be found on our website, thewtfradioshow.com. Want to remind you guys that during our live broadcast, our phone lines are open. The number is 313-462-0068. We strongly encourage you to call in with your questions, comments, or topics, things that are on your mind. Go ahead and slam them out there. Also, check out our media networks on Facebook, WTF, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Show, or on Twitter at the WTF Radio. Senor.
Yeah, folks, we'd love you to call in. You kind of helped shut down everything on Tuesday. Maybe you, or maybe the government, or maybe a glitch. Who knows? But yeah, Tuesday was amazing. When everyone called in, we were feeling the love, and you guys have a lot to say. Don't just let us be the ones talking. Please call in and tell us how you're feeling, what your thoughts are. We'd love to hear you. Pretty much nothing's off limits as long as you keep it somewhat clean, so we can keep that PG-13 rating that we have going that, of course, once in a while even we slip up on. Hey, V, what are you doing after the show tonight? Got plans?
Well, I looked at my crystal ball before the show, and I am seeing visions of pool tables and a band on stage and a margarita.
So you're not going to go switch over to CNN at 8 p.m. Eastern for Obama's headlining Guns in America event on CNN?
No, I managed to catch the King Caliph's news conference in which he cried from the outside of his eyes. No, I got all that. Yeah, I managed to catch all that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much over him. The fact of the matter is, I would strongly encourage anyone out there to participate in some civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience, folks. Once again, there's the word. That's the word of the... Well, that's going to be the word of the year, shall we say, because King Caliph, or whatever else you want to call him, Hussein Obama, King Hussein, has, a little bit over a year and let's see here, about 2 weeks left?
13 days.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting time, too. Of course, we'll be with you folks all the way through it. And if you have a TV at this point, next time he's on, you won't, because most people can't stand him at this point. And I think TVs take the brunt of it in a lot of cases. But, yeah, he's got a town hall tonight on CNN. And, that's not just a bunch of propaganda.
Well,
I mean, seriously.
The funny thing about the town hall, in all honesty, is that it is being held in Virginia.
What? Oh, Virginia, that just denied reciprocity and everything else? Oh, come on.
That would be the one.
That's
so
the
they're
one,
really
right.
open-minded there, and of course, he's going into hostile territory.
Oh, listen to this. But now, interestingly enough, Chris Kyle, who was portrayed in American Sniper, and we're all very familiar with, his wife will be there, but it looks like they're also going to hook up the battery jumper cables to Gabby Giffords, get her jump started again, because she's going to be there with her husband, retired astronaut psycho Mark Kelly, who is now a gun control advocate. Oh, they're going to be there too. So this should just be super. I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be so much to come out of this and so much good, from Mr. Crybaby himself. Of course, those weren't real tears. Real tears come from the inner tear ducts.
Well,
not from the outside of the eye, but.
I'm sure that he'll meet as much question of what he's doing as he did at his news conference when he said criminals, hardcore criminals, are going online and buying guns.
It's interesting how he says things like that, and let's dispel the notion. Of course, most of you listening probably are aware. If you buy a gun online, and I have done this actually, you can't just buy a gun online.
They don't ship it to your house.
No, you have to first, before you can even order it from a place, you have to have your FFL on file with them, and that means you either have your own personal FFL or you have a person in your neighborhood or in your area, your town, that you're going to have it shipped to that is going to do it lawfully and do all the transfer paperwork, the background check before you can pick it up from them. They'll charge, I don't know, my local guy charges $30 per rifle or handgun, whatever the case may be. So you don't just buy a gun online and ship it to you. But so many people don't know, and they believe it because he's the president. He wouldn't lie to you, would he? Of course, that's a rhetorical question. Most of us know the answer to that. But it's just all fallacious. It's all bull.
Well,
Totally.
you understand that his base is now calling for him to add limited ammunitions purchases online as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people do buy ammunition. Now, ammunition is a different thing. You don't have to have a background check. I don't know about California. You kooks out there, who knows what you need to have.
Well, it does depend on what
it.
state you're in. Absolutely, it does. I mean, they're very funny. I mean, that's just like magazines. I mean, they tell you very clearly that 30-round magazines they will not ship to New York and they won't ship it to California. Right. And I mean, in any reliable. Any place I've ever dealt with, they've got a whole list of rules there, and they adhere to them.
Right.
Don't.
Well, think about it. What do they have to lose if they are caught violating those rules? I mean, up into including probably imprisonment. So, I mean, most people are legit and are going to try to do things the right way, even though they, shouldn't have to jump through half the hoops they have to. I believe that most lawful people are going to still follow those rules, whether they agree with them or not, but they're going to, because once again, like I said, you may be facing up to imprisonment and everything, if you're caught violating those rules. The fact remains, it's usually the scumbags, the criminals, the people that really don't care that are going to flout the law and continue to do so.
Well, the unfortunate part of this is that he's going to make all of us criminals. Guys, when we discussed this on Tuesday night, and we did discuss this on our show when we had recurring guest host Suzanne Sherman with us, one of the things that we were talking about is this is not over. He made it very clear in his news conference that just as slavery was not done overnight, the civil rights took years, and the LGBT fight, we're still working on that one. We're not there the end. So this is not going to be over. He made it very clear that the end game is much more. This is just his little minor step in that direction. But we were talking about FFLs and things like that, and one of the things that I didn't mention Tuesday night when I was talking about my concerns for the mental health aspect of it. How easy it is to be classified. I mean, it's easy for the government to put you on a mental health issue stop as it is for them to put you on a no-fly list. Let's look at it that way. You've lost your doctor-patient privilege. You've lost your ability to due process. What people aren't realizing is even if you've never been diagnosed with anything and you inadvertently ended up on one of these lists, now take in mind that they've been sharing your information for at least 11 years. They have not, the federal government has not disposed of your background check information. The FBI has, but only after they've shared it with others. But there's nothing to say that they don't have that list and they don't just add those people to the stop for the background check. Now, when you go and you fill out this form for a background check, it specifically asks you under penalty of law whether or not you are legally capable of owning a weapon. Now, if you don't know your name is on that list, guess what? You can be prosecuted.
Yeah.
You just became a criminal.
Right.
Now, Loretta Lynch has since come out and made it very clear that all of a sudden they are going to truly lock down on enforcement of gun laws. Now, I am certain that they will not begin in cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit. Absolutely not. And I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that they're not going to start with any of the Black Lives Matter crowd.
That's probably a good bet. I wouldn't take that bet.
But I figure if they stumble across the white guy that has an unregistered weapon, he's probably going to be in trouble on a federal level, because it's dependent upon your state's laws. I got into it with a guy the other day because he was going with that nationalist mentality of every state should be required to have open carry. You should have constitutional carry. Now, although I agree with that, I think it's a great idea. I think all states should get on board. I am a big proponent with the more people that are openly armed, not concealed carry, but openly armed, the less likelihood that a robber, a mugger, a rapist, a shooter is going to go into an environment where he is surrounded by people who will take him down. I mean, so do I think it's a good idea? Absolutely, I think all states should adopt it. However, at the end of the day, the Bill of Rights was for the purpose of limiting the federal government.
Yes.
That is why each state has its own constitution. And I tried to tell this guy, you're thinking about this on a nationalist forum. I said, you're taking France, Germany, Switzerland, England, and all the EU companies and saying, oh, well, you're no longer sovereign. You have to follow each other's laws. Because people don't realize each state is sovereign, much like France or Germany or Switzerland or what have you. We joined a union much like they joined the EU.
Yes. No, that's a great point. And they twist it and turn it. And I believe a lot of people flat out honestly do not know. I'd have to say a lot of people honestly do not know.
Well, this guy was saying, well, that's BS because you don't want each state running its, you don't want each state doing its thing the way it wants to and running its. Yeah, I actually do.
We would have more freedom and less tyranny if that were to happen. We may not like it, but you know what? Guess what? Then you vote with your feet, you vote with your wallet, and you move to another state.
I told him that, and he says, oh, well, I wouldn't want to leave my family. I said, then you made your choice.
Right. Hello? God.
I mean, don't make that my problem. Don't limit my freedoms because you don't want to leave New York.
We'd have much more freedom and ability to choose and everything else if the federal government wasn't so all-powerful and in control of everything, and the states retained all the rights that they have available to them and stopped letting the federal government take, to get the money from them and give them a portion back, because of course they don't return everything that they get in the tax money. The federal government's got to pay for all of its employees and all the other stuff. I mean, come on. But yeah, we're way past that. But it doesn't mean we can't get back to it. But that's where we would have more freedom and less tyranny in the United States. And and freedom to vote with your feet. And indeed, big people have. I can think of a couple of big radio hosts. I mean, Rush, everybody knows him. I think he left New York completely at one point for Florida because, New York kept raising the taxes. And he said, guess what? I'm voting with my feet. I'm taking my money where I can keep more of it. God bless him for doing that. And many other people have done that as well. I know people, want to get out of California, and many people have. Sadly, a lot of people that leave California go to other states trying to turn them into California. Colorado, hello. Being one. Texas, they're working on Texas next. But still, you can still vote with your feet and go where you want to go. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you know what? The fact of the matter is, in states like Colorado that had it locked down, and in states like Texas that had it locked down, the only reason that Californians that have migrated to those states have had any headway is because the conservative base there did not stand up and resist.
Yes. Well, I think that you're lured into a sense of complacency, and I see that. And you know what, folks? Every time I'm pointing my finger at somebody, there's 4 pointing back at me. So don't think I ever say anything thinking that I'm better than you, or I'm, in some respects, even no matter what comes out of my mouth. I do realize that. But I think a lot of people are lured into a sense of complacency. It'll never happen here. This is the greatest place. And I get that. Believe me. They think, okay, fine, whatever, that's for them,
as long as it doesn't impact me. But yet when it impacts them, as long as it doesn't hurt, they still don't say anything.
Yes.
And that's where our problem is we say, okay, we don't care what you do as long as it does not have an impact on me. Instead of saying the minute it has an impact on me, regardless how mild of an impact, I'm coming out fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where we need to be as a nation right now.
Right. And I think, I think a lot of people do need that cradle to grave. They want that cradle to grave entitlement and the nanny state to take care of them. But there are others of us that, what is the saying, would prefer a dangerous freedom to what's the other part of that thing? Slavery, a peaceful slavery, basically. But there are other people that simply, the people that go in and out of prison many times, because they have it better in there and they're taken care of. And it's hard to understand that mindset. But regardless, there are many people like that. And so it's something to consider. But
well, one of the most dangerous things King Caliph said during his news conference was, the price of freedom cannot be at the expense of carnage. What do you think the Revolutionary War was all about?
They don't want people to think about that. They don't want people to think about that.
I almost fell off my chair, and I thought to myself, no, you've got it backwards. Mm-hmm. Sometimes carnage is the price of freedom, period.
Right. The tree of liberty being refreshed and all. Yeah, sure. No, the only revolution he wants to think about are those glorious revolutions like in Russia and stuff like that, where they go in and slaughter everybody to the tunes of tens of thousands, of hundreds of thousands. That's where the state takes control and does that.
I really
Stalin or whoever it may be.
I really wanted to give him real tears when he continued to espouse that this ain't regardless of what everybody's telling you, this ain't an attempt to grab your guns. Yeah. This is not a confiscation. Yeah, dude, it is. We're not stupid.
And when he says that, you know that he's immediately lying. When you have to say that, then you know that that's exactly what it's all about. He's at a minimum a narcissistic sociopath.
Well, he has
people said he's a psychopath. Psychopath isn't the right word. He's at a minimum a narcissistic sociopath. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous when you have that much power, and he's still got a year and a year and about 2 weeks left.
And that's right. Well, he and Hillary Clinton have gone on the record before espousing support for gun confiscation. So
Sure.
You're not going to tell me that that's not what it's really about, dude, because we know that's really what it's about. Now, you might con those people who you want to put on the spot by saying, oh, so you want people who have mental issues to have guns. Not really, but yeah, I do. And let them go into a church where everybody is armed, and when they load his ass up, he'll no longer be a problem.
Agreed. It kind of sorts itself out, doesn't it?
And let's take into consideration something else that he kept talking about. He kept saying, 30,000 people should not have died at the hands of guns.
Oh.
Let's really look at that number. That number is 0.0005% of the United States population.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond less than 1%. Really, this is what we're concerned. More people than that die of cancer. He's not out there crying for them.
No. Die in automobile
30%. 30% of our population gets disposed of at Planned Parenthood every year.
I was going to say, what, 35? What is it? Is it 3,500 a day? That sounds high, but is that the number? It's astronomical, and it's, of course, heartbreaking. But yeah, and
so in 10 days, they kill more babies at Planned Parenthood than than Chicago does,
and no national outcry, none whatsoever.
Exactly.
None. Nothing.
Anyway. We know it's here. If you guys missed that show Tuesday night, it is in our archives on Spreaker and on iHeartRadio. Please check it out, as well as YouTube. It was a great show. It was very informative, and we had some tremendous guests, and we were able to work off each other very well, and I'm really happy with the way that we were able to put that information together. However, everybody is talking about what's going on in Oregon, in Burns, Oregon. Yeah. Before we go into this, because the mainstream news media is not talking about what is important in all of this. And let me be real clear on my opinion on this, and yours may differ, and the seniors may differ, and I really don't care, and I'll get into that. I don't care about the standoff right now. Right now, what I am looking at is what has occurred to the Hammond family. Now, when I say the Hammond family, specifically we're talking about Dwight Lincoln Hammond Jr., who is 73, or 74 now, and Stephen Dwight Hammond, who I do believe is 47 years old. I'm going to give you guys a little history on how all of this came about, because mainstream news does not want you to know this.
No, they don't.
The Hammond Ranch is established in the Harney Basin. It was settled in the 1870s by multiple ranchers, and at one point handled over 300,000 head of cattle.
Wow, mind-boggling.
Now, these ranchers developed at that time a state-of-the-art irrigated system to water the meadows, and made it a place that became a favorite stopping point for migratory birds on their annual trek north. In 1908, President Theodore Roosevelt, in my opinion, a political scheme, created an Indian reservation around the Malheur, Mud, and Harney Lakes, and he declared it a preserve and breeding ground for native birds. Later, this Indian reservation, which has 0 Indians on it, became the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. I kid you not. These are facts.
No, I'm not surprised.
I'm laying down the history and facts.
Right.
In 1964, the Hammond family purchased their ranch there in Harney Basin. The purchase included approximately 6,000 acres of private property, 4 grazing rights on public land, a small ranch house, and 3 water rights. Now, by the 1970s, Nearly all of the ranches adjacent to the Blitzen Valley were purchased by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWS, and added to the Muller National Wildlife Refuge. The refuge covers over 187,000 acres. It stretches 45 miles long and 37 miles wide.
Wow.
Now, this expansion of the refuge grew to the point that it surrounds the Hammond Ranch. Now, Fish and Wildlife had approached the Hammonds several times, as they had other ranchers, and many of them, like the Hammonds, refused to sell their property.
Right.
Well, during this time in the 70s, FWS, Fish and Wildlife Service, in conjunction with Bureau of Land Management, took a different approach to the ranch to sell. Now, one thing I need to point out to you guys. Many people don't know that the NSA is not a federal government department. Just because they're ABC, they are private. Well, guess what, people? So is the Bureau of Land Management.
Right.
It is not. It is an ABC department. It is an ABC, but it is not an ABC department of the government. They are a private entity. Well, in the 1970s, the ranchers, along with the Hammonds, were told grazing was detrimental to wildlife and must be reduced. 32 of 53 permits were revoked, forcing many of the Hammond neighbors' ranchers to leave. Grazing fees were raised significantly on those that were allowed to remain. And refuge personnel took over the irrigation system and claimed it as their own.
I think I'm beginning to see.
Now, by the 1980s, a conflict, of course, was well on its way over water allocation. The Fish and Wildlife Service wanted to acquire ranch lands on Sylvie's Plain to add to their already vast holdings. Refuge personnel intentionally diverted the water, bypassing the grazing meadowlands, directing the water into the rising Malheur Lakes, which they owned. Within a few years, the surface area of the lakes doubled. 31 ranches on Sylvie's Plains were flooded. Homes, corrals, barns, grazeland washed away and destroyed, forcing them to sell their now destroyed land, and in financial destitution, forcing them to sell their land at next to nothing to Fish and Wildlife.
Bingo. All planned.
Yet the Hammonds stayed. By the 90s, the Hammonds were one of just a handful of ranchers that still owned private property adjacent to the refuge. Susie Hammond, in an effort to make sense of what was going on, began compiling facts about the refuge. In addition, in some hidden public records, she found a study done, now this is in the 90s, by Fish and Wildlife Services in 1975. The study showed the no-use policies of Fish and Wildlife Services on the refuge were causing the wildlife to leave the refuge and move to private property.
Okay.
Because the land wasn't being used.
Right.
The study showed that private property adjacent to Myler Wildlife Refuge produced 4 times more duck and geese than did the refuge. The study also showed that migrating birds were 13 times more likely to land on private property that is properly maintained rather than on refuge property.
Okay.
Well, when Susie brought this to the attention of Fish and Wildlife and refuge personnel, her and her family, this is when it all started. It was a long train of abuses and pure corruption, I'm going to tell you.
That's right. Agreed. When you call them out like that, it's not going to go well whether you do it respectfully or not. It's simply not going to go well.
Well, exactly. Well, in the early 90s, the Hammond family filed on Livestock's water source and obtained a deed for the water rights from the state of Oregon. Now, you've got to remember, they already own 3 water rights that the federal government kind of diverted away from them. When the Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services found out that the Hammonds obtained a new water rights near the Myler Wildlife Refuge, they became belligerent and vindictive towards the Hammonds. FWS challenged the Hammonds' rights to the water in Oregon State Circus Court. The court found the Hammonds legally obtained the rights to the water in accordance with state law, and therefore the use of water belonged to the Hammonds.
Oh, interesting.
Now, in August of 94, the BLM and FWS illegally began building a fence around the Hammonds' water source.
Oh, jeez.
Owning the water rights and knowing that their cattle relied on the water source daily, the Hammonds tried to stop the building of the fence. Well, the BLM and FWS called the Harney County Sheriff's Department and had Dwight Hammond arrested and charged with disturbing and interfering with federal officials or a federal contract. 2 counts each, 1 a felony. Now, Dwight only spent 1 night in the Deschutes County Jail in Bend, Oregon, and a second night in jail behind bars in Portland, Oregon. He was then, carried before a federal magistrate and released without bail. A hearing on the charges was postponed, and the federal judge never set another date. So basically, it's like, I don't want to deal with this. You guys aren't going to drop charges, and I'm not putting this guy in jail.
Okay.
So that's how that federal judge dealt with it.
Okay. So good. That's positive.
Well, exactly. But he spent 2 nights in jail. Seriously, because you're building a fence around what he has water rights to, so that he can't use it.
Oh, it's Gestapo tactics. They've got the power and the authority, and it's subject to abuse.
Well, it seems that the Hammonds' property is kind of divided.
Okay.
There's an upper part and a lower part, and kind of in the middle is the road that carries you to the wildlife refuge.
Oh, okay.
Well, then Fish and Wildlife began restricting access to their upper property.
Of course. That's the next step.
They began barricading the road so that the Hammonds could not use it, and threatening to prosecute them if they drove through it.
Of course. Oh.
Well, of course, the Hammonds removed the barricades and kept going. It's their property. They have rights of easement to access their property. It was later found that the road actually belonged to the county after some legal battle with the Hammonds over this. Which kind of pissed off Fish and Wildlife and BLM. My barricade, y'all took them down. You kept using it. I tried to stop you from using the road. I was going to throw you in jail for it. And you come up with the legal argument, wait a minute, you don't even own the road. Right. Oh, hell no. Well, shortly after the water and road disputes, the BLM and Fish and Wildlife arbitrarily revoked the Hammonds' upper grazing permit without any given cause, court proceeding, or court ruling. Mm-hmm. As a traditional fence-out state, Oregon requires no obligation on the part of an owner to keep his or her livestock within a fence or to maintain control over the movement of livestock. The Hammonds still intended to use their private property for grazing. However, they were informed, and a federal judge ruled in a federal court that the federal government did not have the right did not have to observe the Oregon fence law.
Okay.
That those laws were for the people, not for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Hammonds found themselves forced to either build and maintain miles of fences or be restricted from the use of their own private property, which cut their 6,000-acre ranch in half.
Wow.
So, because they couldn't afford to fence the land, they had to move their cattle. They experienced lots of years of financial hardship due to the ranch being diminished. The Hammonds had to sell their ranch and home in order to purchase another property that had enough grass to feed their cattle. This property included 2 grazing rights on public land. Those were also later revoked by BLM and Fish and Wildlife. The owner of Hammond's original ranch passed away from a heart attack, and the Hammonds made a trade for their ranch back.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. In the early fall of 2001, Stephen Hammond, the son, called the fire department, informing them that he was going to be performing a routine prescribed burn on their ranch.
Okay. Yep.
Later in that day, he started the prescribed burn. This happens across this country every day.
You better believe it. Mm-hmm.
Well, wind and things like that sometimes carry it beyond the intended area.
Imagine that, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well,
nature.
That happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it burned 127 acres of government land. Now, I'm going to tell you the government holds no land, but that's irrelevant.
Right.
Now, what I am going to tell you is that the Hammonds put the fire out themselves. There was no communication about the burn from the federal government to the Hammonds at that time. Prescribed fires are a common method that even the Native Americans, the Indians, and ranchers have been using since long before this nation was the United States.
Yeah.
Because we have seen scenarios of what happens when you don't do a controlled burn. A storm comes through, lightning strikes, and everything goes up in a blaze, and you have no control over it. Not only that, but burnt land replenishes itself.
I was going to say, it's also very good for the soil itself. It's very good for the soil. You better believe it.
And the other thing that you're not talking about is that the federal government does controlled burns all the time, and they get out of control and they go on private land, and no one is charged with any criminal behavior. I have yet to see where the EPA that poisoned the Colorado River, I haven't seen anybody charged with a criminal action.
Thank you for bringing that up, because didn't that go in and out? I mean, it's still ongoing. look at how much damage that has done. I think it's still rendered the water undrinkable and has done immeasurable damage, and yet because that was caused by federal people, you haven't heard another thing about it, have you? That all that destruction, and of course, we can't cover that. Can't cover that.
Absolutely not.
Thanks for bringing that up, reminding people.
Well, I want you to remember that this burn occurred in 2001.
Quite a while ago.
Because in 2006, a massive lightning storm started multiple fires that joined together, inflaming the countryside in that area. To prevent the fire from destroying their winter range and possibly their homes, Steve and Hammond started a backfire on their property. The backfire was successful in putting out the lightning strike that had covered thousands of acres within a very short period of time. The backfire saved much of the range and vegetation, and Susan Hammond said, "The backfire worked perfectly. It put out the fire, saved the range, and possibly our home." How does our government stand? What does our government do? Is there a thank you or anything like that? No. The next day, federal agents went to the Harney County Sheriff's Office and filed a police report making accusations against White and Stephen Hammond for starting the backfire. A few days later, RangeCon from the Burns District BLM office asked Stephen Hammond if he would meet him in town for coffee. Stephen Hammond went to town and met him, and upon leaving, he was arrested by Harney County Sheriff and BLM Rangers, and then ordered him to go to the ranch and bring back his father. Dwight was also arrested, and they were booked on multiple Oregon state charges. The Harney County District Attorney reviewed the accusation, evidence, and charges and determined the accusations against White and Stephen Hammond did not warrant prosecution and dropped them all. In 2005, now remember this initial burn is in 2001. The lightning strike backfire is in 2006. In 2011, the United States Attorney Office accused White and Stephen Hammond of completely different charges. They charged them with terrorism under the Federal Anti-Terrorism Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996. This carries a minimum sentence of 5 years in prison and a maximum sentence of death.
Really?
Yes. Dwight and Stephen's shots were taken. They were put all over the news as being arsonists. Susan Hammond said she'd walk down the streets and go in stores, and people that she had known almost her entire life would take extreme measures to avoid her. Shortly after their sentencing.
So character assassination outright,
absolutely.
Basically. That's all that is right there.
Well, shortly after the sentencing, Capital Press ran a story about the Hammonds. A person who was identified as Greg Alum posted 3 comments on the article calling the ranchers clowns who endangered firefighters. Now remember, firefighters never went out there. Never went out there. Right. Endangered firefighters and other people in the area while burning valuable rangeland. Greg Alum, a retired BLM heavy equipment operator, soon called Capital Press to complain that he had not made those comments and requested that they be taken down from the website. Capital Press removed the comments. A search of the Internet Protocol, IPO, IPS, I think is what most people call them, came back to where it was originated from the BLM office in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, yeah, you mean the IP address, right. Yep. Wow, so they didn't even try to hide their tracks or anything. No.
But the actual Greg Alum came out and said, that he knows the Hammonds and he feels bad for him, that they've lost a lot and they're going to lose more. They're not terrorists, that this is a hatred in the BLM for them. And he said he just doesn't get it. In 2006, the Hammond house was raided. Agents informed the Hammonds they were looking for evidence that would connect them to the fires. The Hammonds later found out a boot print and tire tracks were found near many of the fires, and no matching boots or tires were found in the Hammond home. During the trial proceedings, federal court judge Michael Hogan did not allow time for certain testimonies and evidence in the trial, which would have exonerated the Hammonds. Prosecuting attorney Frank Papagni was given full access for 6 days, was allowed to use any evidence or testimony that strengthened and demonized the Hammonds. The Hammonds' attorney was allowed 1 day. Many facts about the fire, land, use, and how and why ranchers do what they do was not allowed. Judge Hogan did not allow time for the jury to hear or review certified scientific findings that that the fires improved the health and productivity of the land, or that the Hammond land had been subjected to vindictive behavior from BLM and Fish and Wildlife. Frank Papagni, who is the prosecutor, hunted down a witness who was not mentally capable to be credible, Dusty Hammond. He is a grandson, to testify that Stephen told him to start the fires. Now, he was 13 years old at the time and 24 years old when he testified. And he had been diagnosed as suffering with mental instability or deficiency for many years. He had been estranged from the family for many years. Yet he was that was their witness. Absolutely. Well, Judge Michael Hogan and Prosecutor Papagni would not allow in the jury pool anyone who had rancher experience, that understood anything.
That would understand, right?
Yeah, firefighters,
like
etc.
common sense.
Exactly. And the jury was forced to drive back and forth to Pendleton every day, which was 2 hours each way. They didn't take them and put them up. So they didn't have
total bunk too.
So by day 8, they were exhausted. They just wanted to go home. So Hogan kept pushing them to make a verdict. They eventually came up with the verdict. Of course, in my opinion, exhausted everything. You know, if it's going to take you 4 hours round trip to be a part of this, the damn government should be putting your ass up.
Oh, yeah, seriously? No doubt.
Well, the jury, not understanding the customs and cultures of the area, and now you've got to remember, this is a jury pool pulled from out of town, and exhausted, and what they later described as feeling pressured by the judge for a verdict, who were unaware of the ramifications of convicting someone as a terrorist, did indeed give that verdict and went home. Now, June of 2012, Dwight and Stephen were found guilty and of starting both the 2001, which somehow or another, there's something wrong with this. Isn't there an amount of time you have to bring charges for something like this where no one died?
I would imagine that there has to be some sort of a statute of limitations or something like that.
Well, that's what I would thought. But they were found guilty of starting both the 2001 and 2006 fires. The federal courts convicted them both as terrorists again under
Right.
that 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act.
Mm-hmm.
And Judge Hogan sentenced Dwight to 3 months in prison and Stephen to 12 months in federal prison. Both were also stipulated to pay $400,000 to the BLM.
Man.
Now, Judge Hogan overruled the minimum terrorist sentence, which is 5 years. The day of the sentencing, he retired as a federal judge.
Heard that? Yes. Mm-hmm. Heard they even had cake in the courtroom.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Think about that for a second, folks.
Now, in January of 2013, Dwight and Stephen reported to sentence. They fulfilled their sentences,
Right.
and Dwight was released in March 2013, and Stephen in January of 2014. In June of 2014, field manager for the BLM, Rhonda Karge, and her husband, Chad Karge, who were the refuge managers for Mahler Wildlife Refuge, along with, again, attorney Frank Bagney,
Okay.
exemplified further vindictive behavior by filing an appeal with the 9th District Federal Court seeking Dwight and Stephen to return to prison to fulfill their 5-year requirement. Now, in my opinion, that should have been squashed. It should have absolutely been squashed. They were sentenced. That problem is something you have with the judge. It is not something you have with the individuals. They served
totally
the
agree.
sentence, period.
Mm-hmm.
However, in October of last year, just a few short months ago, the 9th District Court re-sentenced Dwight and Stephen, requiring them to return to prison to complete their 5-year sentence.
Right. The max, yeah.
Now, this is where the issue is, okay? So now that you know the history, you understand this is not about those guys up there holed up at Mahler Wildlife Services. It is not about them, and we'll get into more of that. But it's not about Ammon Bundy and Ryan Bundy or Blaine Cooper or Ryan Payne or any Buddha or anybody else that is holed up in Burnt, Oregon tonight. This is about, number one, the government pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Had they reversed it, and Bureau of Land Management or the refuge says, oh, you know what, we need a controlled burn, and it would have gone over into Hammond grazing land, would they have been fined $400,000? Would anyone have gone to jail? Absolutely not.
Highly doubtful.
So on Monday, Dwight and Stephen, being upstanding American, of honest integrity and character, did report to fulfill their sentence.
They
now,
did.
You've got to understand, to date, they have paid $200,000 to the BLM.
Hard to believe.
But there is $200,000 more required to be paid as of January 1st. As of January 1st, 4 days before they went back off to prison, they were supposed to have paid $200,000 more to the BML. If they were unable to pay it, they are forced to sell their ranch.
Of course.
Guess who has first rights of
And I was going to say,
refusal?
guess who's going to... Yeah. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure that out, does it?
The BLM is going
can't
to
lose.
get that land.
Right. They can't lose.
The problem here is not necessarily any of this. The problem here is that we should have been there 20 years ago.
Yes.
When the fight started. Okay, let's look at. That's when the fight. When it started, that's when people should have congregated together. This is not a Bundy Ranch scenario where there is question about whether or not somebody paid grazing fees. This is someone who had. This is a family that has been tormented for 40 years by a federal government that is going to take their land by hook or crook, no damn doubt about it. And they have done everything by the book and legally, and as is a normal ranch running operation behavior. Period. And these people went to court, accepted their sentence, went to prison, did their damn time, got out of prison, and now are being basically recharged. Doesn't that fall in double jeopardy? And if it doesn't, isn't the problem not with the individuals, but with the federal court judge that retired? You can't just retroactively go in and say, oh, you know what? I don't think I gave you enough time. And guys, this is what we should be pissed off about.
Agreed.
I don't think I gave you enough time for that DUI you did back in 1999. You know what? I think you need to come back in, and we're gonna make you do 10 years. Where is the line? Where is the difference?
I agree. Well, it's not the same situation, but it's just like that federal judge that was appointed by George W. that put that lady in Kentucky, remember, over the gay marriage thing that wouldn't issue the licenses, and I feel he went way above and beyond what power he has and what he should have done, and it just seems like
but it's not the same. But it's not the same. He had the discretion to do that, and then when it was done, it was done. He didn't pull her back in and say, you know what, I just don't agree with your politics. I did something wrong. You're going to jail for 5 years.
Well, I agree. But I'm just talking about the overreach of these judges and what they seem to do, and seem to operate and get backed up every time, and they seem to be able to do whatever they want.
I don't know why the American Centers for Law and Justice is not all over this, offering their legal minds there, because these guys should not have reported to jail January 4th.
Right.
They had already served their time, as dictated by a federal judge. The government does not have the right to go back and appeal and say, hey, I don't think you gave them long enough, after they got out of jail.
Never heard of such a thing.
Remember the dates. The BLM and the Wildlife Refuge pushed this forward and filed this appeal, not when Dwight got out of jail 3 months later, but after Stephen got out of jail a year later. And I want to know something else. What was the length of time that I was under the understanding you have 30, 60, or 90 days to file an appeal, not 12 months.
Yeah.
So this needs a legal mind on it, because obviously their attorney cannot handle the scope of the situation, because they would not be in jail today if they could.
I agree. I don't know why somebody isn't standing up and fighting for them, and we're not supporting them from across the United States. Doesn't mean you have to be over there bearing arms or anything, but I do not know why we're not supporting good people that are being railroaded by the federal government. The biggest bullies on the block. I mean, you can't get any bigger than the federal government. And if they want to get you, they're going to get you. Say what you will, but they're going to. You can't go against them. I don't think it's very possible to prevail. You hear about it occasionally, but very rarely. Unless, if you've got other suggestions or ideas or illustrations, give us a call, 313-462-0068. But I think when you're up against the federal government and you've ticked them off, then the time is on their side time, money, power, everything, and eventually they will get you. And it's just a travesty of justice.
But they will only get you if we stand down. The Hammonds did not. They actually believed that the judicial system would work properly.
Because we all want to believe that. We want to believe that our president won't lie to us and that he's got our best interest in mind. We want to believe all these things, but it's simply not true anymore. It is simply not true. You're in a lawless nation. You're a nation with no common language, no borders. You're in a post-constitutional country, plain and simple. The rule of law doesn't matter if you're illegal. The rule of law doesn't matter if you can buy your way. If you've got the money, you can buy your freedom. You can buy justice. You simply can nowadays. And people don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that. But folks, story after story tells you it's true. As sad as that is. And these people, it's despicable. And I'm actually, while you're telling this story, and by the way, you've been doing a good job at it. Many people are texting me or texting and chatting and stuff on social media, and they're really enjoying it because of the details in it, things that they didn't know. I mean, of course, the only people that are getting the press right now are the guys holding the guns and stuff like that, and they want to overthrow the government. They're standing there in this little they call it a federal building, and technically it probably is, but when you look at it, it looks more like it's a visitor center. Outhouse. Exactly,
it is a visitor center. It is open to the public every single day.
Right. So, they say federal building, and immediately everybody thinks, of course, if you know where they're at, first of all, it's not some huge building and stuff, but about the size of a quadruple outhouse or something, so.
It is in the middle of nowhere.
Right. I remember on former Indian reservation.
With no Indians.
With no Indians. Minus the Indians.
Yeah.
So we just call it a reservation then, I guess, at that point, or maybe just land.
Well, now, we just, now we call it a refuge.
A refuge. Right, yeah. And now it's a refuge, but all the animals primarily go to other places in the refuge to, doing their he-in and she-in and stuff, and reproducing and thriving in the wild. So go figure that out too. Go figure.
Well, I mean, I've got my issues with how the protest. Absolutely a great idea. Absolutely a great idea. It is a shame that there weren't 50,000 patriots surrounding the Hammond family, just absolutely refusing to allow them to turn them. Actually, the courthouse is where they should have occupied. They should have gone to the courthouse and refused entry or exit at the courthouse and surround. But they didn't do that because it snows there, and it's like at night it gets like down to 25 degrees below.
Right.
So, I mean, I totally get that. The problem I have with the standoff situation is, number one, the Hammond incident and the Bundy Ranch incident are two totally different situations. They are just absolutely two totally different situations. I mean, there was some question about grazing fees and who was paid those grazing fees, or if they were paid with the Bundy Ranch. Now, do I agree with the way the government did things? Absolutely not. Bureau of Land Management, federal government, they don't need all this damn property. Why do they own 80% of Alaska and 60% of frickin' 60% of Utah?
Right.
I mean,
Nevada as well.
They're not supposed to attain that much. As a matter of fact, they're supposed to lease land from the state. They're not supposed to own all this land.
I agree.
They have taken great liberties here, and we have talked before on this show about the fact that they do all these national parks and things like that, and the fact of the matter is they always run it at a loss. However, the states always run it at a profit.
And that's something.
States need to get off their ass and say, you know what? When it comes to land and our government, you're not taking any more land. As a matter of fact, if it don't have a military base on it, you don't own it here anymore.
Agreed. Once again, states flexing their rights. But it's unlikely to happen.
Oh, you've got an
scream it from the
FBI
tallest
office?
buildings.
I would suggest you park that over there on Hunter Army Airfield.
Along with all the illegals that you're housing now on our apparently some of our military installations here in the United States, which is a whole nother story altogether. But my God, people.
Now, I'm not saying that protest is not warranted. I'm not saying that action is not warranted on behalf of the Hammonds family. I have a huge issue with what I believe to be government infiltration provocateurs going to a protest and inciting these people to say, you know what, right now, let's go. You know what we should do? We should go over here and we should make our stand. Dude, you didn't bring any supplies with you. You have no food. You have no water. You have... Really? Who thought this out?
Yeah, right.
Oh, they're going to encompass the whole area to make sure can't anybody else. They can cut you off easily to make sure you can't leave and nobody else can come in. If they really wanted to hurt you, they could shut power down to the facility. You're stuck there at 20-something below, and you've got no blankets, you've got no additional clothing, you've got no food. They can shut off the water source, and nobody's coming in. We'll just sit here and wait till you freeze your ass off and come begging us to do something to take you to jail.
Right.
I mean, who thought this out? Who was the genius that you guys listened to?
That's a good
I
question.
want to know.
That's a good question.
Because I think this was piss poor strategic planning.
I believe you are right. Certainly sounds like it, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm not saying that Ammon and Ryan incited this. I think somebody there put this in their head. And them being ranchers and coming from Bundy and raised in that environment, they thought making a stand was a good idea.
Well, it worked out. It worked out beautifully with Bundy. I mean, look at that. That was pretty tense for a while. And the people that showed up and they had the free speech zones, and the people promptly tore those down and said, "The hell with your free speech zones."
But it wasn't 25 below at night.
But exactly, situation was very, very different as far
and
as
a lot of
terrain
people
and everything.
that joined
very different.
And a lot of the people that joined the Bundys brought supplies.
Yes. Plus, they were by these interstates. I mean, they weren't totally isolated. They were, there were many. I mean, heck, that one interstate they showed where snipers were sitting on there, and I'm talking about the Patriots that were there. There were cars. My understanding was that unless they shut down the traffic, there were cars whizzing by on the interstate there. So that they had ingress and egress. They had all of these things. Yeah. So in that way, a very different situation.
I mean, it's
Definitely.
vastly different. It is vastly
Right.
different.
Right.
And it was a situation where people started showing up little by little, and people were able to come little by little because you can't take off and block off somebody's home. They can have any damn body they want to there.
Right.
If they want to have 10,000 guests join them at their house, they are free to do that. It was not the same scenario where it's like they can block off the road and say, you know what, this leads to federal property. No one's supposed to be in there after 9 o'clock at night. No, you're not going anywhere. And right now we have a situation there that we're not going to contribute to. And we can block it off. I mean, this just really, in my opinion, was not well thought out. It was, I think, in my opinion, someone got to the Hammond boys and ramped them up emotionally, and they acted off of an emotional charge.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that this was well thought out. I don't think that now people all over the internet, all over social media, all over Twitter, and all Tumblr and the Cloud and all these other places will sit here and say, well, you've got to make a stand somewhere. Yes, but you have to make the right stand.
Yes.
Otherwise, you fail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to file a suit, don't file a suit by going to Oregon where you're going to freeze your balls off,
Right.
where you're going to be turned away.
Yeah.
Make your stand at your federal courthouse in your state.
There you have it.
Make your stand there.
Mm-hmm.
Make your stand at the state capitol. Demand that your state reclaim what your state owns. Stop allowing the federal government via executive action to classify land in your state unfit for your use.
Agree.
Recognize that the BLM is not an ABC government department. Demand that your representatives defund all of these non-government departments that have to answer to no one except the administration.
Yeah, that just sounds like a recipe for disaster when you have all that power and all the land that they control. Yeah, that just, like I said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's a recipe for disaster right there.
This is something that should be taken up on a state level.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like you preach over and over and over. Start there, folks. Start there.
Well, I mean, it's not just that, but standing for the Hammond family, I have absolutely no problem standing with the Hammond family. But
Right.
you're not solving anything at a wildlife refuge that nobody's going to go to when it's 25 below and snowing outside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So leave there and carry your little happy ass to your state to the Oregon State Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And make the demands on the governor there in Oregon and the representatives there in Oregon to make it right for Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then when you go home, and then when you go back to Arizona, do that for Arizona, your Arizona State Capitol. And when you talk to your dad, tell him to do it for Nevada. And
Right.
everybody listening should be doing it for their state because this is unacceptable. And everyone should be screaming at the top of their lungs for it to be overridden and that the Hammonds be demanded a release. Absolutely, I'm down for that. But I'm not jumping in my car and driving to go freeze my balls off
Right.
in Oregon. Sorry.
Well, here's an interesting perspective from a listener, and the listener writes to me, I believe that Obama's BLM worked to create the situation in Oregon to discredit the militias. I believe they used disinformation to lure all those folks there, just like they are confusing the gun issues with Obama doublespeak, getting even the NRA to sound like it's changing its mind.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely say
Mm-hmm.
that the federal government has initiated somebody who you guys in Oregon better think about who started talking about going over there and taking over the refuge. Because I'm going to tell you, I don't know who that person is. And I don't know who the little idiots were that crowded around them and brought it to you guys and said, "Oh, really? We need to do this." What was that dog commercial where the big dog and the little dog was bouncing back and forth behind him, all support. You know.
Oh, it was on Bugs Bunny for sure too.
You know, Butch.
I
Butch. I got you, Butch. I got you.
Yeah, there you go, Butch. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, whoever those guys are, they are not part of this movement. Mm-hmm. They are not who you should be listening to. They are provocateurs, and they are looking to get someone hurt.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know who they are, but I'm going to tell you, because I'm not there. I wasn't there. But I'm going to tell you, whoever that was that thought that that would be a great idea, who came up with that brilliant synopsis.
Yeah.
slap him now and tell him
That's
how
just-
stupid he is.
Are you saying that's just as bright as attacking Russia in the wintertime?
I would venture to say about as effective.
Right. About several people have tried it, I think, and had not mixed results, had no results.
I mean,
Ended in tragedy. Yeah.
am I wrong here to feel the way that I feel, Senor?
No, not a bit. I don't believe so. And like I said, the input I'm getting from folks that are listening in online and stuff, they're agreeing with you.
I'm not saying don't stand for the Hammonds. I'm not saying don't stand for the Bundys. Our government and its discretionary private industry are abusing the hell out of the United States citizens.
Oh, man.
We absolutely should be standing up against this.
Yep. First-class bullies. That's what they are.
I read an article the other day. They're trying their damnedest to run every rancher out of this government. I want to tell you why, people, because I read an article the other day. Their cronies and their investments, etc., center around a new facility that will be cloning cows for human consumption. Why use a rancher? He might make $1 when the government can control it.
Right. Well, and let's face it, no ranchers. Who controls the food, the production of food, whether it be actual plants or if it be, cattle, etc. Think about that, people. Where are you going to get your food from? China? You going to rely on China? Russia? Where are you going to rely? Who are you going to rely on for your food? I say we keep it here. I mean, as it is, we've already got rules that we're sending stuff, chicken, I believe, over to China to be processed, then sending it back. I mean, this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't see salmonella in my future for that,
control.
right?
Yeah, it doesn't work out well the more control that the government has. It just doesn't.
It is insane. So stand for the Hammonds, absolutely. Stand for the Bundys, absolutely. When everybody was talking about grazing rights and all of this, that, and the other, that's our land. That's the people's land.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government does not exist except for the people. So whose land is it? It's the people's land. The people like to eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
Let those cows graze.
Right.
Can they be overgrazed? Absolutely. But a good farmer or rancher knows not to abuse their land and doesn't want to because ultimately it will put them out of business.
Yes, the land exactly. The land sustains them, so they have to manage it well. And they do manage it well, and usually they've done it for generation upon generation.
Well, I mean, that's just like, they're trying to do this thing in Oregon. Oh, well, migratory birds. We got to take this land from migratory. Remember at the Bundy Ranch? Oh, it's the desert tortoise. Even though the government had its own stash of desert tortoise that it was killing because they had too many.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like gun control and abortion.
Whenever they say things like that, it's total bull Obama. You know it is as soon as they say something like that. But guess what? Lots of people are on that bandwagon. Oh,
wait a minute.
Goodness, the poor desert tortoise or whatever.
Senor, don't you know birds don't fly unless the government allows it?
Well, of course. They listen to all that, I'm sure. Right.
Birds don't fly unless the government allows it. You know what? I live down in Florida next to the Everglades. Do you guys know that alligators don't breed unless the government says so?
Of course not. Of course they listen and watch all the government memos and they pay attention to all that, I'm sure.
And they don't get hungry either until your little dog runs out to the edge of the water.
Well, the interesting part of your story was saying that they have this wildlife preserve that used to be an Indian reservation, but yet the animals are reproducing and doing better not on the reservation property, but the
most important part is it was classified an Indian reservation that no Indians lived on.
Hello.
This is the insanity of our government. So do we need to stand for the Hammond family? Absolutely. Amen. I encourage everybody out there. Make calls. Get to your state capital. Demand. Call Oregon State Capitol. Demand. This is absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. Stand for the Hammond family. Stand for the Bundys. Stand for those people who are doing things the way that they have been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody wants to bring up the Dust Bowl. But what people aren't understanding is the Dust Bowl occurred because the federal government told them they couldn't do certain things with their property. Right. So they abused the land by force of the federal government. The federal government created the Dust Bowl.
You know, I don't want to go into it too much, and I can't speak to it too intelligently. Saw a snapshot of a show that was on last night. Can't even remember the show, but it was people that are raising bees. Because, folks, if you know anything about what's going on in the wildlife, we're losing our bees. And without the bees, you're not going to be eating anything before long. You're not going to even have flowers. I mean, these bees are so critical. So this gentleman and his family are raising bees very naturally. And in fact, when they were working with these bees, they didn't have anything on. It was crazy. But then they cut to a California university where they're artificially inseminating queen bees, to produce just exactly what they want. And he said they're destroying the bee population. And he said they're supposed to be smart. So are they doing it intentionally or not? That was kind of what I was gleaning from it. But they were showing them, and then they were also saying these queen bees. He said these queen bees, they last a long time. And it's best to just keep that queen bee. But what the government is doing, and the people that are doing these research for the government stuff, they're taking these queen bees, and then they'll take another bee, like after 4 weeks or so with the queen, and they kill her, and they rub this stuff on the other bee so that the drones accept it.
Her pheromones.
But they're constantly messing with nature. They are destroying nature. And he said this is going to have negative ramifications on everybody in the United States, ultimately possibly the world. I mean, if we keep losing our bee population. And I think there's just things like that we're not considering. So is the government doing it because they're idiots, or are they doing it for nefarious reasons? You got to ask the question. You got to think about that.
Well, I mean, we've had local bee farmers, just individual hobbyist type individuals that have, been getting bees, and I've heard stories nationwide about this, and I was complaining about this probably 6 or 7 years ago,
right?
Because of the population of honeybees. Without honeybees, as you so eloquently pointed out, without them, we have no food. No. Our animals have no food. So there is no food without honeybees, period. If they have not for their pollination, there is no food. Yes. Period. Unless you want to eat Monsanto genetically modified garbage.
But doesn't even that Monsanto stuff, doesn't that have to be pollinated as well? Can that grow without pollination?
Yeah, but you can transfer it in an environment. I mean, that's, genetic splicing, etc.
But once again, it's not natural in any way,
No,
shape,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. So some years ago, what you found was city or county ordinances being changed to not allow bees because they swarm, and oh my gosh, there's a bee swarm. Let me tell you guys something. One of the dearest people in my life was an entomologist for the government. And that is how I found out you can go stand in the middle of bees swarming. You can go stand right. They're not going to sting you. They don't sting or attack when they're swarming because they're looking for alternate location, a new home. They have outgrown their hive. The hive splits. A new queen goes with the new hive. But people in cities and towns were freaking out. So then they started doing all these ordinances. Oh, you cannot be a hobbyist beekeeper. You have to have X, and you've got to be checked. And I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous. And you saw this movement being done nationwide. As a matter of fact, this goes back even to the 80s when we started getting the infestation, thanks to the government, of the killer bee.
Yes, right.
And so then you started having federal inspections of all the beehives for killer bees. The government, anything the government touches turns to crap. That's just a fact. They are doing nothing except trying to put us in a position where we have to rely on the sources that they desire us to utilize because it lines their damn pockets. It grants them more power, and peasants be damned.
And control. All about power and control. And it never
I don't
ends well,
even know
folks.
that they care about the control. I really don't know, because let's face it, you control a man's food
That's what I mean.
and water.
Yeah.
You
got
control the man. I mean, if you're the only game in town for water and food,
Right.
you ain't got to worry about controlling nobody. You've just got to control your own environment. Put up a fence, set out some armed guards, and you're golden.
I agree. And it doesn't end well.
Let the masses kill themselves for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hey, people are liking the show tonight, and we appreciate you folks. And if you want to call in, you still have time, about a half hour here on the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Radio Show. The number's 313-462-0068. Of course, our last live show of the week. And we'll be back again next Monday. But yeah, if you'd like to call in the next half hour with any topic, pretty much, we've covered quite a bit, and we've got some more to cover. But please call in and talk to us. And no, V, you did a great job with that story. I think getting all those details out was critical. A lot of people have heard, bits and pieces, and maybe don't have the time. But I've had several people say they're going to be sharing the show once we're off air, and you get it posted because of the information that's in it. So thanks for doing that. That was good.
Well,
Definitely
I thought it was
beneficial.
important that we, everybody's focusing on what's going on at the wildlife refuge, and nobody really knows what started all of this. And the Hammonds are getting lost yet again in it.
Yeah.
And I don't really give a damn about what's going on at the wildlife refuge, because I think that was not a well thought out plan to begin with. I think that was pushed forward by provocateurs. But what is occurring to the Hammonds is an absolute atrocity.
A travesty, yes, it is.
And
undoubtedly.
And I want people to stand for the Hammonds. I want people to understand if they can do it to them, they will do it to you.
Yeah, I better believe it. Better believe it.
So,
That's for sure.
but thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying the detail. Like I said, I the mainstream media, no one else is really detailing how this came about, or the fact that this has been a 40-year fight.
Well, why would they? It paints the federal government and their cronies in the BLM as the bad guys, and so why would they? Why would you ever get the truth out of them? And that, now they can just demonize them some more, because, like you said, these the militia or whatever they're calling themselves, took over. So now that, and then of course King Dingaling came out and made his big proclamation with his pen and his phone and whatever else, and so now that's kind of kicked all of that, I think, kind of out of the news at this point. It seems like, but
well, it surely did kick out of the, that for the most part, that Iran tested a missile that landed less than a mile from a U.S. aircraft carrier.
that's something.
You heard very little about that. There was maybe a slight blurb, maybe here and there. And of course, now you've got North Korea, saying that they're testing hydrogen bombs. Iran admits that they're testing bombs in their facilities. Of course, those aren't nuclear because John Kerry said so.
Right.
John Kerry and Jane Fonda are on top of that shit for you people.
Yeah. Hey, before we move on, our listeners are awesome. One of them just wrote, "Too bad their name isn't Mohammed. The DOJ would fight for them."
I mean, to tell you.
Oh boy! I'll tell you what, they'd be a protected class unto themselves.
Oh, somebody would lose. What was it? Papagni would have lost his job for prosecuting them.
Yeah. Allahu Barakbar. Allahu Barak. They'd be golden. Well, I'll tell you what, Obama, Hussein himself, couldn't get over there on his prayer rug fast enough.
Oh, let him go.
Oh,
let him go. Bring your cow to the White House.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
We'll have a beer.
Speaking of guns, and I wanted to say something that one of our listeners had brought up, and I probably can't get to it quick enough, but he had mentioned some statistics that we were talking about when we were talking about guns, and one of them was, I think, 40% are used. I don't know. I won't say that right now, but I've got one funny one for you guys, a little bit more lighthearted. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or BATFE, posted a link to their Facebook page clarifying requirements for people selling guns to obtain a federal firearms license, better known as an FFL. The link was posted just after President Obama released new executive actions on gun control this week. Now, in the comments section, I've got to read you a comment because I'll tell you what, the American spirit is still alive. So this is the ATF Facebook page, and at the top of the page it says ATF issues guidance to help the public understand when a federal firearms license is required. Down the page quite a bit there is a little one-line blurb. So, say I am a federal agency and I sell a bunch of guns to Mexican cartels. Do I need a federal firearms license? 5,737 people liked that alone. Sadly, I cannot see what the ATF responded. But somebody said it's cute when ATF investigators tell the people who pay their salaries to get off a public page for exposing the hypocrisy inherent in your job. Must be difficult to be an ATF investigator in Colorado and not be able to do anything about all of that untaxed weed. That comment got 500 likes. So I like the American spirit. Stay feisty, people. Stay feisty.
Folks, I mean, the more of us, what people don't understand is there is power in numbers. Mm-hmm. Stop being afraid. They cannot get us all.
And be a thorn in their side. Practice your civil disobedience and your sarcasm, and be a thorn in their side. It's fun. You can actually have fun doing it.
Somebody asked me earlier today, said, you're just really confrontational.
Oh,
I said,
boy.
I wasn't always confrontational.
Wasn't always like this.
I actually used to be a nice person who would...
Until I had to deal with people on a daily basis.
Till I had to deal with assholes.
There you go. Till you got to deal with people. Yep.
And, it kind of changes things.
Right, well, it does. It helps shape you, there's no doubt.
But what I have found is that it catches them off guard because they expect you to just go along to get along. Stop going along to get along!
Yep, there you go.
There is power in it, and you catch them off guard.
Right. Well, here's another one of our listeners, and here's what I wanted to bring up, because I think it's an important point. He said, last time I checked, there were over 22,000 federal, state, and municipal gun laws and ordinances. Obviously, the 22, and obviously is what I'm saying, but he says the 22,001st is the one that's going to work and make the criminals disarm. And then he goes on to say, of the gun deaths, which we were talking about earlier in the show, almost 40% are suicides. Tragic, but a choice free people should be allowed to make.
Well, it is the truth, and the fact of the matter is, and we discussed,
if they intend to kill themselves, they're going to use something else. Guns might make it a little bit easier.
They're going to hang themselves. They're going to swim out in the middle. Go jump off of a bridge. Go jump off of a building. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And this is something that we discussed Tuesday night. There are already laws on the books. If somebody is known by their friends, their family, their doctor, as being suicidal, all they have to do, a doctor is required by law, all the rest have to do is pick up the phone and dial 911. The police will come pick them up and take them to a facility for evaluation. If they are found to truly be suicidal, they are involuntarily held.
Right. Agreed. Mm-hmm.
So gun laws are unnecessary,
and all the other stuff that they do. That works a lot better. It seems like.
Which it has the way it is now. There is no gun anything with it. It's common sense. Gosh, my sister's gonna kill herself. 911. My sister's over here saying she's gonna kill herself. Oh, she just broke up with her boyfriend. Yes, she's devastated. Probably nothing to it. Do you think she's going to kill herself? Probably not. You know, people that usually talk about killing themselves don't usually kill themselves. Well, I understand that, but I am concerned because she's highly distressed. So what do the police do? The police come over and they catch. And then they ask me, did she say she was going to kill herself? Yes, she did. Ma'am, I'm sorry. We're putting you in the car. We're taking you to the local evaluation center. And we will hold you for up to 72 hours to have you evaluated. Yeah, come Monday morning, if it's on a Friday afternoon, come Monday morning, after you've been evaluated, if you're found that you are suicidal, we're transferring you to the mental hospital. If you're not, guess what? Call your sister and tell her to come get you.
Mm-hmm. Right, there you have it.
Now, where in that is a gun law necessary?
Yeah. No.
Yes, suicides happen.
Right.
Yes, suicides of our veterans occur.
Oh, man, yeah.
At a but that's because our government screws them over!
Right, and many of them feel like they have no other recourse, right? Mm-hmm.
So the solution to their misery is for the government to intervene on their behalf.
Right.
Really? Mm-hmm. In what frickin' universe does that make sense?
None that I'm aware of, but maybe there's ones that I'm not aware of. None.
I'm gonna lose it here in a minute.
Uh-huh. Here's another listener writing in, and this is kind of going along with what we've been talking about tonight, government overreach and idiots in government. He says, Wyoming sage grouse habit has been claimed to be an endangered species, apparently, and Bloom forced oil and coal bed methane drilling stopped during their mating season, the same year that they increased the limit you can take per day during hunting season. Yeah.
And that's another thing. We sit here and we say, oh, honey, why are we getting permits and tags for hunting?
Right.
I mean, you've got a hunting season. The fact of the matter is, if you find out your buddy's doing it illegally, or your buddy is taking funds or damaging, but what people say, oh, hunting is bad. Do you understand what would happen to most of these species if it were not for hunters?
Oh gosh,
they would overpopulate.
Death, disease, overpopulation. Oh man,
they would fall victim to exactly disease or starvation, and all of them would die.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a reason for it.
This nation, the land in this nation, has been being hunted since before there was a this nation. Idiot.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Hey, boy, the time flies when you're having fun, and folks, we must be having fun because the time is a-flying. But we've got a story that broke just before we went on the air tonight, and I want to make sure, because we've been following this since we went on the air back in October something of 2000. What would that have been? 14. Yeah, 2014. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Officials at Fort Bragg have scheduled 2 weeks in August for the court-martial of Bo Bergdahl on charges of desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. The Fayetteville Observer reports that the court-martial is scheduled to begin on August 8 and last through August 19. Bergdahl, of course, who we all are aware of, scumbag traitor, was held by the Taliban for 5 years after he walked off of base in Afghanistan. He was arraigned during a short hearing last month on charges of desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. If convicted of desertion, he could get up to 5 years in prison. A pretrial hearing is scheduled for Tuesday before Army Judge Colonel Jeffrey R. Nance, who will preside over future hearings, including the court-martial, once again, that will occur 2 weeks, or at least scheduled for 2 weeks in August for Bo Bergdahl. Scumbag, traitor, hang him high, be done with him. Leave his carcass for the birds.
Well, they let 2 more Gitmo detainees go today, and there's so much that we focused on the on the Hammond thing tonight, and I appreciate you guys
No, that was
tolerating me doing that, but I felt like it was important. But there are some other things that you guys need to know. The flood of invaders continue to come across our southern border, to the point that the regime is considering 6 military installations for housing them. Currently, that's Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota, Naval Support Activity Philadelphia, Hanscom Air Force Base in Massachusetts, and Travis Air Force Base in California. Preferably, if you're going to house them anywhere, put them in California. They seem to like them out there.
I was going to say, they'll give them voting rights and every other damn thing.
Well, I mean, I don't care. You know what? I don't care what California does. I really don't. I really don't. Nope. What I care about is the other, well, I don't care what California does. I don't care what New York does. I don't care what Massachusetts does. I don't care what Hawaii does. Let the other 46 states determine for themselves what they want to do. Because obviously y'all are going to do what the hell y'all want to do any damn way.
Yeah. Agreed.
So if they want to do it, fine. Let them do it. They're a sovereign state. They are well within their right to enforce any damn laws they want to in their state. But don't bring that crap to me, because then it's on. And if the people in California are fine to lay back and put their feet up and say, oh, this is acceptable to me, then, hey, either deal with it or go. And I know we have some very good friends out there, but they know that's how I feel.
Yeah, we do. And yeah, but it's, I don't think that state is salvageable at this point.
I really don't either.
Think it is.
And then we've got a flood coming across the southern border through San Diego. They're from Tijuana. And amazing, the number of people named Muhammad or Maktour or whose last name is Ahmed. Azim.
Or Obama. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, or Obama or Barack something.
Hussein.
Yeah, well, you know, if the shoe fits. And to give you guys another little tidbit of information, what is the highest surging name that the Social Security Office is now reporting?
Is it starting to be that here too?
Latino Muslims in America.
Is it starting to be Mohammed here too?
Absolutely, it has gained by 10,000-fold. In 1964, Social Security registered 29 people with the name Muhammad in this nation. In 1974, there were 142. In 1984, there were 571. In 1994, there were 1,240. And in 2014, there were 2,931 babies born in the good old United States of America with the first name Muhammad.
That ought to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, folks. It ought to. Because that's telling you what you really need to know. And we're arguing over whose pick for president is best. And surely that's part of it, what's happening right now. But I mean, folks, while we're worried about all these other little things, that's your long term. That's your future for your sons and daughters, their sons and daughters, grandkids, etc., and so forth, right there. Because they are multiplying at an alarming rate, and they don't have freedom and from sea to shining sea and assimilation on their mind. Don't you mistake that they do. Don't be mistaken.
Well, I mean, you know, and that's the thing. And still people say, oh, I don't care about somebody's religion. You know what? If it was a religion, I could agree with that. If it was a religion. But you cannot classify something that has a political intent and takeover, and that says that everything but it must be sacrificed for it. That is not a religion, and that should not be recognized. And there are laws on our books that say that were written specifically with Islam at its base.
Ask Churchill what he thought of Islam. Ask, leaders for the last couple hundred years what they thought of Islam, and they knew what it was all about. They knew it, folks. They knew what it's all about. It's about subjugation. It's about oppression. That's what it's about. That's simply what it's about. And it's like a cancer. It gets in and it continues to metastasize. Is that the right word? I believe it is. And
yes, it is.
it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it keeps rotting the body. I mean, killing the body off. And that's what it is. And that's what it will do. And you might say, wow, that's a long-term thing. I believe your idea of long-term and my idea of long-term when it comes to Islam taking over in America or making great inroads, they're probably two different things unless you're paying attention. Quite simply.
I can't imagine that anybody listening to this show would think, oh, that's long term.
Right.
I think anybody listening to this show, we've given them the information enough to know that we're talking about 10 years or less.
Right. Hey, and interestingly enough, a little aside to something you'd mentioned, I heard somewhere else that, we mentioned the H-bomb. You mentioned the H-bomb that North Korea set off. And interestingly enough, they said they can make these H-bombs, and I forget what yield they had, what kiloton yield, but it was pretty impressive. They can make them as small as 6 inches by 15 inches in size. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if a half a dozen, 5 dozen, 10 dozen of those got out and got into the wrong hands? What a 6-inch by 15-inch small H-bomb, but like I said, very, very powerful. Can you imagine what would happen? Because they're able to miniaturize them more and more.
Well, if
we're
North
in an interesting
Korea
world right
has
now.
it, which, many people are questioning whether or not they actually have it or not, or whether they were just testing, more nuclear type technology and trying to blow. It really doesn't matter. They have nuclear capability. That's really, at that point, really, how bad does it have to get? But the fact of the matter is that you have governments like this. And then we back the likes of Iran to do that. Thanks, John Kerry and Jane Fonda. And then we anticipate that there will not be a problem. No, we don't anticipate that. The idiots in D.C. that organize this bullshit think that they've got some kind of handle on something. They can't handle what's in their pants.
You're getting cranked up again. Oh my, look at the time. Hey, real quick, as an aside.
And I'll be honest with you, nobody else wants to handle what's in their pants.
Yeah, I've got a question for you here. Let's see if you can answer this. You have 10 guns. Obama wants 8 of your guns. How many guns do you have?
10 guns.
That's why you
Actually, I got 10 plus 3 more that I'm going to go buy because the bastards asked for it.
3 more in the meantime. Like a lot of good patriots have been doing. I love seeing your pictures and your stories on social media. So keep up the good work there. He definitely is the gun salesman of the last almost 8 years now. Wow.
Now, I am going to once again, if you own weapons that you're concerned about, I'm going to tell you that you really need to leave your doors unlocked and things like that so robbers can come in and steal them from you. And, I personally have a situation where I recently went out on a boat, and I don't remember the the exact coordinates, no GPS, etc. I figured if I saw land, I'd gone too far, and ran into some rough seas. You never know when you're going to encounter pirates out there, so of course I carried all my weapons with me, encountered rough seas, and everything fell overboard.
You want to go to Somalia? Wow. What, you think you were Captain Phillips or something?
Well, I had considered going spearfishing, and it just seemed like it would be easier just to shoot the fish.
That idiot didn't even have any guns on his ship. I mean, whatever. Jeez.
So I'm just saying, boating accidents happen. People steal things. I mean, point in case, if they want. I mean, if they want to say anything, case in point would be how many FBI and CIA officers and DHS officers recently have had their weapons stolen from their vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Was Kate Stanley killed by one of them in California? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, no tears cried for her though. No tears.
And we've
for
never
her.
heard anything more about that, have we?
Nope. We have
Interesting.
not. Mm-hmm.
Funny how that all works, huh?
Yes, it is. It never ceases to amaze one.
Somebody just reminded us that there is no hydrogen in a hydrogen bomb. Lithium-6 deuteride. Okay, that just is mind-blowing to me. It's fission or fusion or something, and it makes a big kablooey, and people can die, and that's all I know about a hydrogen bomb. So,
well, someone sent me a sign from a gun show, and you guys, I hope, will appreciate this as much as I do. It says, "Sorry, we don't sell guns to terrorists or Democrats. It's too hard to tell the difference."
I was going to say, what's the difference? That's right. Hey, we don't have much time left, but we should probably touch on it a little bit, and just in the little bit we have left. Dow suffers worst 4-day start to a year on record, and China, boy, they are hurting over in China. What do you make of that?
Well, you know that I follow, the economic side of this nation pretty closely,
Yeah,
and
you do,
I have been staying on top of this. What's occurring? We have massive problems, and we've had them for probably the last 20 or so years, and it's kick the can, hide the problem, don't deal with it, print more money, etc. Well, we know that that's going to be coming to a close because the rest of the countries are really getting pissed off that we're the only world currency who has ever had the capability to print money, and we consistently abuse that ability. We know that even back in 2007, thanks to our policies, we began seeing a situation where we should have, in all essence, seen a complete and total recession that would have compared to that of the 1920s, the Great Depression. However, we were too big to fail, and we printed money to salvage all of that for faith's sake. And what we did in the meantime is we damaged other people that we owe money or people that we trade with because we really devalued the money, yet we've tried to prop it up for public service. Now, we have this situation where other people's money is being affected, and ultimately it falls on our shoulders. I noticed that, yes, we are seeing a downturn, but we're being falsely kept at levels. Just much like China has just shut theirs down, I promise you, if our government wasn't able to intervene in Wall Street and our numbers took the plunge that the reaction warrants, they would shut ours down as well to stop the further decline. However, we have a government that does intervene in Wall Street's activities, and so I think we're being falsely stabilized. I think they're going to, play this game with us for a while.
Right.
But as I've stated many times on the show before, inevitably that house of cards will fall.
Mm-hmm.
And when it does, we're going to hurt. People that are not prepared are going to be hurting and hurting desperately. You will see a scenario where our government is not able to put out Social Security checks, disability checks, EBT, or whatever government assistance, whatever, and up to and including military paychecks.
Good point. Yeah, it's one heck of a bubble, and it's not just the United States, and it's you wanted a global economy. Of course, I say you, most of us didn't want it, but they wanted a global economy, and that's what we've got. And the herding won't be confined to just one country or several countries. I believe it'll be intentionally worldwide. And does it help lead to the NWO? Well, I don't know.
Well, that's exactly what its whole purpose is when we stop looking out for our own financial wealth and concern ourselves with the betterment of our own, and we concern ourselves with third world nations, whether or not they're going to be able to place themselves in the same civilized and economic situations with the same technology, etc., that the United States has offered the world. Let's be honest with this. If it weren't for the United States, most of the technology that is available in the world today would not exist. We went through 100 years of an industrial revolution that grew by leaps and bounds, and we shared it. And we shared that information,
right.
and we shared that technology with other governments around the world. Unfortunately, some people didn't want it, and they suffered because of it. Yeah. Oh, well, that's on you. It's not ours to fix. It is not ours to fix.
Right.
Our responsibility stops at our national borders. Period. So, I mean, right now we have a government that is doing a twofold situation. Spread the wealth around, make sure everybody gets their fair share around the globe so that we're not the bad guys, and for those nations that might be having difficulty, make sure we bring them in. But that is catastrophic thought process, and it is self-destructive in nature. But we're at the end of our show. We're out of time. Of course, we love being here with you guys. We hope you enjoyed our show. Of course, we're here